This is Job Search Reality. Todd Brooks from Athens, GA, sharing the truth about the ups and downs of trying to find your place. The interviews, the waiting game, the hopes and doubts we all face, but I keep moving forward every day here in Athens, GA.
Welcome back to the Job Search Reality Series podcast. I'm Todd Brooks coming to you from Athens, Georgia. And today we're going to talk about something that I think just about every frustrated job seeker has wondered at some point. Was that job I just applied for even real? Seriously, you find a position, you spend 45 minutes filling out the application. You know, that's a long time you spend filling it out. You upload your resume. Then the website asks you to manually type in everything that's already on your resume, which remains one of the greatest mysteries of modern civilization. Then you write a cover letter. You answer 37 questions. You create an account. You verify your email. You come up with a password requiring 3 capital letters, 2 numbers, a hieroglyphic, and the blood type of your first grade teacher. And then nothing. No rejection. No interview, no update. The job remains posted. 3 weeks later, you see it again. 2 months later, the same job is still there. And eventually, you start wondering, did anybody actually intend to hire somebody for this position? That's where we're starting today. We're going to talk about the growing controversy surrounding so-called ghost jobs. Job listings that may not represent an immediate, genuine opening, and why government scrutiny of employment platforms deserves the attention of every job seeker. But that's only part of today's show. Later, we're going to turn the conversation around, because suppose you survive this crazy hiring process. You actually get hired. Congratulations. Now you've unlocked workplace problems level 2. And that brings us to Workplace Q&A Episode 3, where a customer service manager asks what he's supposed to do when one of his employees expects special treatment because she's married to his boss. Oh, this is going to be fun. So we've got ghost jobs, hiring frustration, management, favoritism, workplace politics, and some lessons I've learned through my own career. So let's get into it. I recently came across a LinkedIn post that immediately grabbed my attention. The basic message was, the job you applied for never existed. And the post discussed concerns about ghost jobs and scrutiny involving LinkedIn. Now, before we go any further, I want to make an important distinction. Not every job that doesn't call you is fake. Not every company that leaves a listing up is deliberately deceiving applicants. And sometimes there are perfectly legitimate explanations. A company could freeze hiring, budgets change, a position gets filled internally, the hiring manager changes direction. A company could continuously recruit for high turnover positions. There are all kinds of possibilities. There's all kinds of possibilities. But the larger issue is still legitimate. How transparent is the modern hiring process? Because if companies advertise positions that they aren't actively trying to fill, that's a problem for job seekers. And I think sometimes we underestimate exactly how much an application costs the applicant. I don't necessarily mean money. I'm talking about time. 20 minutes here, 45 minutes there, an hour tailoring your resume, another half hour writing a cover letter, then perhaps a personality assessment, then a recorded interview, then another assessment, then silence. Multiply that by 50 applications, 100, 200, for some people, several hundred. That's not insignificant. And there's an emotional cost too. Every application carries a little bit of hope with it. Maybe this is the one. Maybe they'll call. Maybe this is the job that gets me back on my feet. Maybe this is finally the opportunity. And when job seekers repeatedly encounter listings that seem to go nowhere, eventually skepticism takes over. You start wondering whether you're applying for a job or donating your resume to a corporate database. So let's ask an obvious question. Why would an employer advertise a position without an immediate intention to hire? There can be several reasons. Some employers may be collecting resumes for future openings. Some may want to see what talent is available. Sometimes companies anticipate growth that doesn't materialize. Sometimes the job was legitimate when it was posted, but circumstances change. Sometimes listings remain online because nobody removes them. And there have been broader concerns about employers keeping listings active for reasons unrelated to filling an immediate vacancy. But regardless of the reason, here's where I come down on this. Applicants deserve transparency. If you're building a candidate pool for positions that may become available 6 months from now, say that. Put that in the listing. We are accepting applications for anticipated future openings. Fine. At least now I know. I can decide whether spending 30 minutes applying is worth it. What frustrates people is believing they're competing for an active opening when there may not actually be. Because job seekers are constantly told to behave professionally. Show up on time, research the company, customize the resume, write the cover letter, send the thank you email, dress appropriately, follow up, but don't follow up too much, be enthusiastic, but don't seem desperate. Apparently, there's a precise level of enthusiasm somewhere between I couldn't care less about your company and I have already tattooed your corporate logo on my arm. Job seekers are expected to follow all these unwritten rules. I don't think it's unreasonable to ask employers for something in return. Tell us whether the job actually exists. And this is one of the reasons I started the Job Search Reality series. I think we've sanitized the job search. We talk about resumes, interview techniques, networking, LinkedIn profiles, keywords, applicant tracking systems, but we don't talk nearly enough about what prolonged unemployment or a difficult job search actually feels like. There's rejection, there's uncertainty, there's embarrassment sometimes because everybody feels like you should have found a job and that if you don't have a job already that you're lazy or you're not trying hard enough. There's frustration. And there's a strange experience where you can be incredibly busy searching for work while everybody thinks you're doing nothing because you don't have a job. You can spend 4 hours applying for positions and finish the day with absolutely nothing tangible to show for it. Nobody called. Nobody emailed. Your bank account didn't change. Your employment status didn't change. And you worked. But you worked. You applied. You applied for jobs. That's working. But you don't get paid for it. That's psychologically exhausting. And then somebody says, have you tried applying online? And then you're like, no, never occurred to me. Thank you, Uncle Bob. You've solved unemployment. I'll get right on that. But seriously, this is why transparency matters. Behind every application is a person, maybe somebody who's been laid off, maybe somebody trying to change careers, maybe somebody supporting children, maybe somebody whose savings are disappearing, maybe somebody who's been rejected 50 times and is desperately hoping number 51 is different. When you look at it that way, a job listing isn't just another piece of corporate content. People make decisions based on that. So what do we actually do about it? Because complaining about the hiring system might make us feel better, but unfortunately, it doesn't pay the electric bill. There are a few things I think job seekers can do. First, look at how long the position has been posted. That doesn't automatically tell you whether it's legitimate, but it is useful information. Second, check the employer's own careers page when possible. Third, look for signs that the company is actively hiring. Fourth, Don't spend an enormous amount of time customizing applications for every questionable listing you encounter. Your time has value. And fifth, and this is important, don't build your entire job search around one platform. So for those of you who love LinkedIn and for those of you who love Indeed, those are the two most popular job search websites, recruitment websites, whatever you want to call them. Stop applying just on those platforms, because from what I'm seeing as I look at threads based on my own experience, those two really aren't working out well for people. People are having more luck with the smaller job boards or applying directly through companies themselves, or maybe even going in person and filling out an application. I can speak for experience. I have had some success with Indeed as far as being able to interview for jobs and stuff. No success with LinkedIn whatsoever. I feel like LinkedIn is more of a tool to be recruited by somebody. Somebody might notice you and pursue you for a job. I think trying to pursue a job on LinkedIn, just from my experience, is just a dead docket. I just don't think it's working. So use job boards, use company websites, use networking. If you got somebody who owns a business, that might be the best person to go to try to find a job. It may not be the job you want, but it's a connection that you have. Talk to former coworkers. Talk to friends. Contact recruiters. Look at professional organizations. Attend career fairs. And yes, sometimes just reach out to companies directly. The job search needs multiple lanes, because applying online can become like putting quarters into a slot machine. It's like you win sometimes, but it's the time you're going to lose. Apply nothing. Apply nothing. Apply, then you might get an answer. Thank you for your interest. We decided to move forward with another candidate. At least the slot machine occasionally gives you cherries. But let's assume everything works. The listing was legitimate. You applied. You interviewed. They liked you. You got the offer. You accepted. You walk into work on Monday morning. Congratulations. You have successfully completed the job search portion of the Job Search Reality series. Now welcome to Workplace Reality. So I guess if I ever get a job, we can have a spinoff of the show. We can call it Workplace Reality. But right now we're just going to call it Job Search Reality, because I think a lot of us are in the same position. We're looking for jobs. Because getting hired doesn't mean workplace problems disappear. Sometimes that's when they begin. And that brings me to the latest installment of Workplace Q&A. And for anybody new to this series, Workplace Q&A is where I take questions based on situations people encounter at work. Names and identifying information are changed, but the lessons are based on real workplace situations. Today's question comes from Ronald in Porterville, California. Ronald says he's a customer service manager for a small company. His boss is the sales manager. There's just one little complication. His boss's wife works for Ronald. What could possibly go wrong, right? No issues at all. Ronald says she frequently wants privileges other employees don't receive. Leaving early, running personal errands, Fridays off every week, going on vacation after she's used her allotted time, coming and going differently from everybody else, and Ronald feels trapped. If he says yes, his employees think he's playing favorites. If he says no, he's worried his boss might retaliate. He worries that his boss might retaliate. It's a really real thing. Ronald basically has an organizational chart that looks like a family reunion. Here's the Workplace Q&A segment. Welcome back to Workplace Q&A, the series where I answer your questions about careers, management, leadership, human resources, and the real situations people face in today's workplace. The names and locations in these stories have been changed, but the workplace lessons they're based on are real. My goal is to help you become a better employer, a better manager, and a better leader by learning from situations that happen in workplaces every day. So let's get to today's question. Question is from Ronald in Porterville, California. Todd, I'm currently a customer service manager for a small company out here in Porterville, California. My boss is the sales manager, but his wife works directly underneath me. The problem is, she constantly wants special treatment that the other employees don't get. She wants to leave early, run personal errands during the workday, come and go whenever it's convenient for her, and generally expects privileges that nobody else receives. I'm afraid to tell her no because she's married to my boss, and I'm worried there could be retaliation against me if I don't give her what she wants. At the same time, I can already see it creating resentment among the rest of my team. They're starting to notice that one employee gets different rules than everyone else, and I'm worried it's going to hurt morale. Todd, what would you do if you were in my position? Wow, okay, that's a great email. Ronald, thanks so much for writing in because this is actually a situation that more managers face than people realize. The first thing I would tell you is this. Employees notice everything. They notice who gets promoted. They notice who gets away with coming in late. They notice who leaves early. And they definitely notice when one employee is treated differently because of a personal relationship with management. Whether that's fair or not, perception becomes reality inside the workplace. Now, I also understand your position. You're caught in the middle. On one side is your boss. On the other side is the rest of your team. No matter what you do, someone could end up unhappy. If I were in your shoes, I would avoid making this personal. Instead, I'd have a professional conversation with my supervisor. I simply explain that the different treatment is beginning to affect morale and ask for clarification on what the expectations are moving forward. That way, you're not accusing anyone, you're asking for direction. If your boss wants exceptions made, then those exceptions should come from your boss, not from you quietly making decisions that everyone else sees. The other thing I remind you about is that consistency is one of the most important qualities of good leadership. Employees don't expect perfection, but they do expect fairness. When rules only apply to certain people, trust starts disappearing. Once employees believe favoritism exists, it becomes much harder to rebuild morale. Finally, Ronald, don't let fear keep you from being professional. You can have difficult conversations without being confrontational. Be respectful, be factual, focus on how the situation affects the team, not on the individual. That's the approach I'd recommend. Ronald, thank you again for your question. If you have a workplace question you'd like me to answer on a future episode of Workplace Q&A, email me at jobsearchrealityseries@gmail.com. I'm Todd Brooks, and if you enjoy workplace stories, management lessons, leadership discussions, and career advice, please like, subscribe, and share. I'll see you next time on Workplace Q&A. Have a great day. Okay. So now that you've heard my original answer, I want to dig deeper into this one because there's a bigger leadership issue here, and it starts with something managers sometimes forget. Employees notice everything. You might think nobody noticed somebody left at 3:15. They notice because they want that privilege too. You might think nobody noticed somebody came in 30 minutes late. Oh yeah, they notice because they're like, why come I'm not coming in 30 minutes late? Why are they not getting in trouble? You might think nobody knows somebody received an exception. Trust me, they know. There could be 14 employees working diligently, and somebody in that office knows exactly how many vacation days somebody else has taken. I don't know who appointed this person, but there's apparently one in every workplace. They're basically the unofficial Department of Internal Affairs. The favoritism, or even the appearance of favoritism, can destroy morale. Imagine telling employee A, no, you can't leave early today. We need coverage. Then employee B walks out at 2:30 because employee B happens to be married to your boss. What do you think employee A is going to think? They're not going to say, I'm sure there's a fascinating administrative explanation for this discrepancy. They're going to say, this is BS. And you know what? I don't mind saying the full word. So instead of saying BS, let's just say what it is. This is bullshit. And now, the problem isn't employee B leaving early. The problem is suddenly trust. But I also have sympathy for Ronald because Ronald has been given responsibility without necessarily being given authority. That's one of the worst positions a manager can occupy. You're supposedly responsible for managing somebody, but you're afraid to actually manage them. Think about the questions running through Ronald's head. Can I deny this request? Can I discipline her? Can I document attendance? Can I give her a negative performance review? Can I have a difficult conversation without hearing about it from my boss tomorrow morning? And here's another uncomfortable question. Does everything I say to this employee get discussed with my boss at home tonight? That's an awkward power structure because technically Ronald is her supervisor, but practically he may feels like she has more organizational power than he does. And that's why my advice is not, Ronald, put your foot down and show everybody who's boss. That's terrible advice because Ronald may discover very quickly who the boss actually is. My recommendation is push the policy question forward. Go to the sales manager professionally. Don't accuse his wife. Don't take it personal. Don't say, your wife thinks she owns this place. Probably not the opening line I'd recommend. Instead, I want to make sure I'm handling scheduling consistently. I've received some requests for exceptions, and I want clarification about what authority I have and what expectations you'd like me to follow. Now the issue is policy, not personalities. But this does lead into something I think businesses underestimate. Your workplace culture isn't what your employee handbook says. It's what employees watch happen. A company can put beautiful words on the wall: integrity, teamwork, accountability, respect, fairness. I've seen companies have enough motivational words on the walls to qualify as a Hallmark store. None of that matters if employees see something completely different. If the handbook says attendance matters, but certain people can come and go whenever they want, employees learn the actual policy. If leadership says everybody is accountable, but certain employees never face consequences, employees learn the actual policy. If management says promotions are based on performance, but everybody knows relationships determine advancement, employees learn the actual policy. Culture is what happens after the meeting ends. That's why favoritism is so damaging. It's not just about one person receiving something. Everybody else starts recalculating their relationship with the organization. Why should I work harder? Why should I follow the rules? Why should I trust management? And once these questions start, you've got a morale problem. Now, I'm not saying that family members should never work together. There are fantastic family businesses. Husbands and wives build successful companies. Parents work with children. Siblings work together. Entire generations sometimes work inside the same organization. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. But companies have to recognize the conflicts that can arise. If your spouse works with another manager, that manager needs clearly defined authority. Otherwise, you're basically saying, manage my spouse, but remember I control your paycheck. That's not pressure at all. Have fun with that. Clear policies matter. Reporting structures matter. Documentation matters. And leaders need to make sure employees aren't afraid to enforce ordinary workplace expectations simply because somebody has a personal connection to somebody higher in the organization. Because once people believe relationships matter more than performance, you've created two workplaces, one for insiders and one for everybody else. And here's why I wanted these two subjects in the same episode. At first glance, ghost jobs and workplace favoritism seem completely unrelated. But they're really connected by one word: trust. Job seekers need to trust that employers advertising jobs are genuinely interested in hiring. Applicants need to trust that they're being evaluated fairly. Employees need to trust that workplace policies apply consistently. Managers need to trust that leadership will support them when they enforce these policies. And organizations need employees to trust the organization. Once trust disappears, everything gets harder. Recruiting gets harder. Retention gets harder. Management gets harder. Morale gets worse. And eventually, your best employees start doing something companies absolutely hate. They obviously hate this and they absolutely hate it. Updating LinkedIn. Although hopefully they're applying to real jobs. We've come full circle. If you're currently searching for work, here's what I want you to remember. Don't allow a broken hiring process to convince you that you're broken. Rejection doesn't automatically mean you're unqualified. Silence doesn't automatically mean your resume is terrible. And a job remaining posted doesn't necessarily tell you what's happened behind the scenes. Control what you can control. Keep improving, keep networking, keep applying strategically, and protect your time. And if you're currently a manager, remember this. People are watching what you tolerate. Consistency matters. Fairness matters. Boundaries matter. And when you're caught in an uncomfortable situation involving somebody with personal connections to leadership, stay professional, get clarification, document expectations, focus on policy rather than personalities. You can't always control the workplace you're managing in, but you can control the kind of manager you choose to be. That's going to do it for this episode of the Job Search Reality Series podcast. I'm Todd Brooks, otherwise known as Todd Brooks from Athens, Georgia. If you're listening on Spotify or another podcast platform, follow the show so you don't miss the next episode. And if you're watching my content on YouTube or Facebook, please subscribe. You'll find the Job Search Reality Series workplace Q&A, career discussions, management lessons, workplace stories, and much more. And I want your questions. If you've experienced something unusual during your job search, if you're dealing with a difficult management situation, if something happened at work and you're wondering how you should handle it, send your workplace Q&A question to jobsearchrealityseries@gmail.com. Identifying information can always be changed for privacy. And remember, the modern job search can be frustrating. Workplaces can be messy. Careers rarely go exactly according to plan. But sometimes the best thing we can do is talk about what actually happens, not what the corporate training manual says is supposed to happen. I'm Todd Brooks. Thank you for listening to the Job Search Reality Series podcast, and I will see you next time.
Just waiting on that call to come through. Feels like I'm hovering in the Athens blue. All these interviews and empty spaces, looking for a foundation, not just traces. I'm ready to build my nest and settle down, find my own place to land in this classic city town.